Welcome into the Source Say podcast, your go-to Kentucky basketball podcast on the KSR Podcast Network. I am your host, Jack Pilgrim of Kentucky Sports Radio. Very excited to be joined once again by Shawn Smith of Frederick Douglass Basketball. Shawn, how the heck are you?
I am fantastic, Jack Pilgrim. How are you?
I'm excited, man. I really am. We are exactly 1 week away from Kentucky Pro Day, so we will be able to see on our computers, on our televisions, however you want to do the streaming thing on SEC Network Plus, you will see it next Tuesday, a week from today, 5:30 p.m. You will get Kentucky basketball on your viewing surface, however that's going to be. I will be there in person watching it all unfold. My first time seeing the team live in person. So, man, I'm just excited. Just hearing all summer, all early fall, all the good, the bad, the ugly about this team, and kind of be able to have that vision kind of come together and become a reality. It's going to be so fun, man. So that's why we have decided to use today's show as our SEC Power Rankings Day, where it's not just about Kentucky. You guys hear us talk ad nauseum about the Cats, who's looking good, who's struggling, all those things. But now we're going to see the rest of the league, how they are doing, and just kind of how their off seasons unfolded and what we should be preparing for in year two under Mark Pope after, just a really tough spot for Pope to be in, Shawn, in year one, where, not only are you taking on the Kentucky job, coming off a Hall of Fame head coach, starting late in the process with the portal already underway, all of that stuff. You also have to take on an SEC that was historically great, a conference that will probably never be touched ever again in the history of college basketball or the future of college basketball. And things went very, very well in year one for Mark Pope. But what does year two have in store? Let's start with Shawn, just kind of big picture, just the vibe of the SEC, what people are saying about the league, kind of just what the expectation is coming off of such a juggernaut of a year one for Pope and what he had to overcome, just what people are thinking about this league and, going into year two.
Well, I think it's a league that obviously last year is one of those years where you just look at it and every single game was a gauntlet, right? Like whether it was on the road at Georgia, like Kentucky struggled in a year ago, or a tough grinded out win at Mississippi State. Like it felt like every single game was one of those that you were capable of losing. Even the two games against Oklahoma that came down to needing, buzzer beating baskets there, late game winning shots from Otega Owe. I don't know if you're going to get that on a night to night basis in the league this year, because I feel like the bottom of the league is not going to be some of those teams that are capable of pulling off an upset on any given night. But at the end of the day, this is still a league that I think is going to produce 4 or 5 teams that are capable of making a run to the Final Four, and a couple of teams that I think can win a national championship. Will Kentucky be one of those? We'll kind of dive into that as we go throughout this episode, Jack. But any league that you look at, when you're talking depth, how many teams are capable of making that final weekend? And I think that's kind of what you judge it off of. Talent-wise, I think this is a league that's going to have 4 or 5 teams that can get to that final weekend. And then from there, is this going to be a repeat league to win a national championship? It's defending its crown this year with Florida. Can Kentucky unseat Florida at the top? But there's 4 or 5 teams there that we'll get into over the next hour that I think are capable of making that run.
And it's funny. I think the league as a whole can be separated. Again, I think it's going to be a very good year. I think it's not going to be historically great because history doesn't repeat itself too often. There's a reason why last year was historically great, but it's still going to be a very good year with an asterisk. I think that the top group, probably thinner among the elite of the elite, but maybe the depth is still really, really good, where on any given Tuesday or Wednesday night, you could be going home with a loss against a team that's currently ranked 13th in the league. I think that's just the reality of the beast that is the SEC as we know it moving forward for the next couple of years at least. But I think the bottom of the league still stinks. I think the bottom 2 are a pretty consensus bottom 2, and I just don't see much room for optimism there. But I also think that last year there were 6 or 7 teams that, hey, they could make a run. You could feel pretty good. I think that group is more limited, and I think maybe Bruce Pearl's departure at Auburn kind of plays a role there as well. We're obviously going to talk extensively about that as well. Some different just things at play with Alabama and some of the, Tennessee, how much they are going to have to replace in talent. Just a lot of those moving parts there at the 3, 4, 5, 6 spot that I think is going to be it's going to create an interesting back and forth between the two of us, and I'm excited for fans to kind of chip in the comment section as well. But without further ado, is it time? Do we want to just jump right into this thing? And we have a lot to talk about, so clearly we got to get started sooner rather than later, or else we're going to be talking till midnight, Shawn.
Yeah, and you're probably going to. I mean, obviously, if I'm looking down, it's because there's a lot to go through tonight, right? Like with these lists and where we're wanting to go with notes. But I'm probably going to do a lot of mine too in tiers of what I think. Like this tier, I think is capable of winning a title and Final Fours. But the bottom half of the league, I think we are all probably are going to kind of go the same direction here.
So we're going to start at the bottom, not spend as much time on those guys. And then at the top of the actual contenders, we'll obviously dig a little bit deeper. But number 16 overall, dead last in the league, I'm going with the South Carolina Gamecocks. Maybe it's just my feeling a little bitter after how the football game went this past weekend. But sorry, Lamont Paris, it's just not going to be a good year. There's replacing just way too much, losing Colin Murray Boyles, Jamari Thomas, Nick Pringle. You get Michi Johnson back for the 37th time. That's going to be fun. But it's a bad roster, and Coach Paris is going to be coaching for his job at this point. I don't know. I don't have a lot to say about South Carolina because it's going to be tough sledding down in Columbia, I believe.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way, honestly, about where we're going here at the bottom of the league. But tough job. It makes it even more eye-opening and wow to me that Frank Martin was able to get that program to a Final Four just less than a decade ago. So when you look at the bottom half of the league and you starting with a team that I believe a year ago was 12-20. Are they in that same number of wins? Is that kind of what the record looks like again in this upcoming season? But that's where I think that you start at the bottom of the SEC this year.
Yeah, I agree. And same kind of applies here with LSU at number 15 for me under Coach Matt McMahon. I like him as a person. I think he is a solid coach, but man, just the consistent talent down there in Baton Rouge has been really, really tough for him to get. You're losing Cam Carter, averaged 16 points a game. Jordan Sears averaging 12 points a game this past year, and didn't get to replace them with a whole lot of extra talent. You're kind of banking on, Shawn, one of these high production mid-major guys to translate in the SEC. You did get Jalen Reed back. That was a good piece from a year ago, averaging 11 points a game. But I do think that Matt McMahon has his hands full once again with another year in Baton Rouge. Yeah,
trying to build a program, right? But I think that's where I'm going to is obviously South Carolina at 16, LSU at 15. I don't think that's a surprise. Those are two bottom teams from a year ago and two teams that should be at the bottom this year. And then those are games that if they're on your schedule and you're at the top of the league, you got to win. Like you can't let one slip there against one of those teams. So South Carolina at 16, LSU at 15 for me, and pretty much for the same reasons, Jack. I just think that South Carolina obviously replacing a lot, and then LSU, it's still an uphill climb for the Tigers in Baton Rouge.
And for 14, I am going with the Georgia Bulldogs under Mike White. I think last year was a little bit of fool's gold, unfortunately, when you have a lottery talent in Asa Newell averaging 15 points a game. Silas Demery, awesome point guard prospect, one that was very, very nearly Kentucky's point guard going into next year, averaging 13.5 points a game. You get some familiar faces back, Blue Kane, Somto Cyril. I like the additions of Jeremiah Wilkinson from California. Cannon Catchings is an interesting name from BYU, but I just, coming off a tournament appearance, I think this is probably going to be the cutoff for me. Maybe this is a spoiler alert, but this is going to be the cutoff for me in NCAA tournament teams. I think every team that we talk about this point forward is going to make the tournament, but I do not see Mike White getting Georgia back to the NCAA tournament this go-round.
That's a good point, too, about how much depth can the league get to this year when it comes to tournament teams. Now, this is where me and you will start to go different directions. Some will be the same. And honestly, Jack, and when it comes to that 10 through 14 number, it's the margin for error there could slide either way. Like whoever we have at 14 could outperform and maybe go 11 or 10. But obviously, I'm going to go with this one. I'm not going to go Georgia, but I'm going Texas A&M, and maybe I have them too low. This feels like a team that could outperform 14. Obviously, when you look on paper, it's a team that clearly Bucky McMillan is winning on shooting. And if they knock down shots, this is a team that can beat a lot of teams in this league. On nights where they don't make shots, I think they're going to struggle. And in this league, Jack, you know it. Those nights where shots aren't falling, you got to find a way to win basketball games. And I just don't know if early on that this roster is what they're going to want it to be in College Station to reflect that. But this is certainly a team that could outperform 14, but I just think there's going to be a lot of nights in this league where if you're not making shots, you got to find other ways to win. And I don't know if this team is built to do that. But if they do, could push some of that line that you're talking about of teams that could slide into maybe being a bubble team late. But I just don't see it in this season. I think they're going to have more nights where they don't make enough shots.
Yeah, I think we'll disagree on that one. I'm excited to kind of dig into that a couple of spots later, if that tells you anything about how high I am on Buckyball down there in College Station. But for 13th, I am going with Dennis Gates at Mizzou. Good team last year. I liked them last year. It was a massive win for Kentucky to close out the regular season up there in Como. So I'm high on the culture in Mizzou, but I'm not high on this roster. Look, you're losing Tamar Bates, 13 points a game. Caleb Grill, 3-point marksman, the guy, just absolute thorn in your side every time you play him. Kentucky was thrilled to get out of that game without him absolutely torching them from the perimeter. So losing those two is a massive, massive hit. Lost Tony Perkins, lost Marquise Warwick, who of La Familia fame, as you may remember. But just a lot of turnover there. You're hoping that a Sebastian Mack, a Javon Porter, some of these other guys, Jaden Stone averaged 21 points a game 2 years ago at Detroit. Can he kind of be the spark plug, a guy kind of a surprise in the SEC? I'm not buying it. I think they're going to sneak into the SEC because I do think that they're well coached, but I think they are probably as close to that tournament line as they'll get. I think they'll be fighting for their lives on Selection Sunday.
And at this spot, I'm going a different direction. I'm going Georgia here. And I know that this is a program that Mike White was able to get to the NCAA tournament and snap. I believe it was like a decade-long streak where they hadn't been to the postseason, but they've lost 3 of the top 4 guys. There's questions at point guard play. And I know this, Jack, and you know this in this league. If you don't have great guard player, you don't have something consistent at the point guard position, more often than not, you're going to find yourself on the wrong side of a final score. And in this league, you start stacking up losses and you're not able to win on the road, you're going to be in that bottom half of the league. And this is one of those teams where I was struggling if I wanted to put A&M a spot higher and flip it, but I felt like Mike White having some continuity of at least being in the league, his experience being in the league, obviously another year at Georgia, I thought would give him a bump there. But this wouldn't be one that surprises me if this were flipped and A&M is ahead. But Georgia I think they lost a lot, and just a lot of questions there too that I just don't think that they're going to outperform more than 12th in the league.
I'd say at this point forward is where everybody feels pretty safe in NCAA tournament territory. Could be wrong, maybe with some, I have a lot of high upside, high potential teams here coming up, but I feel pretty good about this line being kind of the safe bet for NCAA tournament teams. And at number 12, I'm going with Mark Byington and the Vanderbilt Commodores. Look, I love Vanderbilt. I love Mark Byington. I think they're fun. I think he gets a ton out of very little in terms of talent and resources. This roster is losing a lot. Jason Edwards at 17 points a game. AJ Hogard, almost 10 points. Jalen Carey flips to Tennessee for the interconference transfer. But they added a lot of really fun pieces. I like George Kimball III from EKU, 18 points a game. Frankie Collins from TCU. Duke Miles, I think he was a really tough, gritty guard under Porter Moser at Oklahoma last year, almost 10 points a game. So I think that the Commodores are going back to the tournament. I just think their style of play, I think their coaching, I think a lot of that's going to carry their weight, and they will be back in the big dance this coming season.
And I'm going to the same spot here. I've got Vanderbilt, coming up, and I think that this is a team that can make the NCAA tournament. Obviously, the talent's not going to pop off the page at you, but this is a well coached team. This is a well coached program. They've got an electric building when they're winning basketball games, where that city and campus can kind of get behind them. We've seen the Memorial Magic, right? Like Kentucky, obviously, was stung by it last year. So that's a building that they can win some games at home and then go on the road and win some games as well. So it's not a roster that's going to pop off the page at you, but I think that they have enough to win enough in the league to get them into the NCAA tournament this season.
I think this might be my first controversial pick that a lot of fans probably won't agree with necessarily, but I'm going Ole Miss at 11. I'll be honest, I don't love this roster. Compared to the top 30, top 40, ranking that a lot of, national pundits have this Ole Miss, I think, the Chris Beard effect is carrying a lot of that weight. But when you look at the actual nuts and bolts of this roster, losing Shawn Padula, who was kind of the SEC tournament darling, NCAA tournament darling, Jamin Brakefield, a veteran there, Matthew Morrell, that's a lot, Jalen Murray, Dre Davis. I mean, those are all 10-point per game scorers. You get Malik Dia back, good, solid talent there, but not necessarily a needle mover. And just some of the pieces that they added, you're hoping that AJ Storr can get back to his kind of brilliance that he had a couple years ago, really tanked it out in Lawrence with Kansas. So, can James Scott be, a name to keep an eye on? What happens with Travis Perry? Like, that's kind of an interesting one that, BBN will obviously pay close attention to. Elias Camardine from France is going to be a name that is going to probably pencil his name into the starting lineup. Can he live up to the expectation? There's just too many moving parts for me to really buy into Ole Miss as one of those true competitors in the SEC. So they could be good, but man, there's a lot that I have to see, and they lost a ton from a really solid Sweet 16 team last year.
Yeah, and I know that's like you were with Texas A&M earlier. This is going to be mine where I shift a little higher that we'll get to, but mine coming up here. It may surprise, like if this were a roster and you weren't in the SEC, but I've got Texas coming up here, and Sean Miller, I'm intrigued to see getting back into a major conference to see what he can do. Obviously, they've got some holdovers from the Rodney Terrier that's going to help, but I don't know if it's enough to really do what he wants to do at Texas in year one. Now, obviously, if we're talking about Vanderbilt and those teams being NCAA tournament teams, and this is a team that's probably going to be one of those bubble teams as well that you could find on Selection Sunday and play its way in the NCAA tournament. They're going to have talent, but this isn't the league, Jack, where the 11th team in the league is going to be able to consistently beat the top half of the league. But I think that they're a tournament team on paper that can do enough, and Sean Miller is a really good coach. And I know he's probably excited to get this opportunity back in a power conference. Obviously, at the NCAA tournament last year with Xavier, and how that game played out with beating Texas in that game that I was actually at in Dayton. So to see it come full circle and him get this opportunity at Texas, it's pretty cool. Solid roster, but not solid enough to put them any higher.
We are officially into the top 10 of our SEC preseason rankings, and here we go. Buckyball, baby. Texas A&M, Bucky McMillan. Man, I'll be honest. I think they're awesome. I think they're fun. I think it's going to be, Shawn, I compare it to a very, poor man's version of what Mark Pope was able to do at Kentucky this past season in terms of late start, having to just basically go to the transfer portal and say, all right, let's just figure this thing out. They added over a dozen players from the portal, stacked them all up in a hurry coming off Buzz Williams' departure. Not going to be as talented as this last Kentucky team, but I think they have a really high floor in this total rebuild. Like Mackenzie Mbako, a guy that Kentucky flirted with, Rylan Griffin, another guy from Kansas, another guy who has a ton of potential that could really kind of break through next season. Pop Isaacs, I loved him out of high school, 16 points a game last year at Creighton, dealt with some injury issues. If he can get back healthy, you're kind of betting big on Jakari Lane. Can he kind of recreate some of that mid-major magic from North Alabama? He was an 18-point per game scorer last year. A lot of those just kind of man, if this works, if this goes in their favor, Marcus Hill, 11.5 points per game coming from NC State. There are a lot of guys on this roster. And look, Buckyball works. There's a reason why, Samford had one of the, most entertaining products in college basketball over the last several years under Bucky McMillan. So I'm just kind of betting on, after us seeing how building a high floor portal filled roster can work in the SEC with a little bit, not as dominant of a league this coming season, I think it can work. And I'm betting on Buckyball to get back in the NCAA tournament. They were in the round of 32 under Buzz Williams last year. I think they're going to potentially even match that. I think they're going to make the tournament. I think they might win a game or two.
I had a hard time where I was putting them earlier because I do think that they're capable. And that would have been as high as I would have put them, is where you have them. So I went, but I decided to go lower. But where I'm coming in at the spot is I'm going Oklahoma. And when we're talking about a team last year that gave 2 thrilling games to Kentucky fans, that Oklahoma game both times was just like down to the wire. It was one both times that frustrated you. This team from Porter Moser, I think, is going to be able to do a little more than last year's team did. Backcourt obviously is undersized, but I think that they have a good blend of guys that can play on or off the ball that kind of gives some flexibility while being smaller. I think this is going to be an NCAA tournament team in Oklahoma, one that I'm confident in. I'm putting them here at 10, but it's capable. If you win a game or two early that kind of separates you, you maybe pull off an upset against a top half team of the league. Maybe you slide and you become a top 8, top 7 team. Obviously a veteran coach and a guy that's done it for a long time. I think that this is a team on paper that's going to be an NCAA tournament team and be very solid.
Yeah, I will be talking about them here very momentarily. But until then, you talked about Shawn Miller at Texas. I love that hire. I think, coming from Xavier, I think they have a lot to be excited for. They were a first 4 team. You watched Rodney Terry's group over the last several years just thinking, man, if they just had, these resources with a better coach team, they could be that much better. You're bringing back Jordan Pope and Tremont Mark, 2 11 point per game scores. Again, losing Trey Johnson, top 10 pick, that's going to really hurt. Arthur Kaluma was a really, really high impact piece for them. So you got 2 departures, 2 key returners, but I think kind of that needle mover for them, Dalen Swain coming from Xavier. That was a kind of continuity piece for Shawn Miller, a guy that he really trusted, had a big NCAA tournament performance, a guy they really leaned on heavily down the stretch there. I love him. And then Simeon Wilcher from St. John's, that's another really intriguing piece that they added as well. I think he can provide a big time spark for them down in Austin. So I think it's, they kind of just felt like they were scratching the surface of this kind of getting back to the basketball school territory. Again, not going to compete with football, but you get what I'm saying. They have the resources to be very competitive in basketball, and Shawn Miller was an investment hire for them to kind of get back to that. And I think it's not going to be his best roster that he's ever put together, but I think it's a hell of a start for them returning to the NCAA tournament and being a top 10 seed in the league.
Sorry, I was muted there. Couldn't find the button. I'm going here at this spot, and I'm going with a roster that obviously it's heavy on portal pieces. And Chris Jans at Mississippi State, I think he's done an excellent job at putting rosters together and getting a lot out of them. And this is a team that, on paper, Jack, I think is one that could obviously outperform being in the middle of the pack of the league when you've got star power at guard that can make shots and win games in the closing 4 minutes for you. It's a separator. And I think that it's enough to put them in beyond the middle of the pack or right there at 8 or 9, but also can win you some games late and can get you back to the NCAA tournament. So Mississippi State at number 9 for me, I think they're a solid team that's going to win a lot of games this season and will pull off some upsets, but will still lose some games just because the league is what it is at the top. But this is a team that at 9 on that SEC tournament bracket, if this is the 9th best team in the league and you're playing one of those early games there in Nashville, it's a team that you don't want to see because I think they're one that could pull off a run in Nashville and perform and finish even better when it comes postseason time.
Yeah, we're starting to see some overlaps here, Shawn, where we're kind of one spot off here or there. So yeah, I agree with you. I'm a big fan of what they're doing, but you already talked about them at year 10. I'm going Oklahoma at number 8 under Porter Moser. Probably higher than a lot of people have Oklahoma, but man, I just really love what they did in the portal. I think, how Porter saw what he lost. Look, when you have Jeremiah Fears going lottery picking in the draft, you lose Kobe Elvis, Duke Miles, Jalon Moore, Bryson Gooden, Sam Godwin. I mean, you get just absolutely depleted this offseason, but then you kind of watched how he navigated the portal, and you added Xavier Brown from St. Joe's, Nigel Pack from Miami, Darion Reed from Alabama, Tay Davis from Notre Dame. You start kind of seeing the vision of a really high level backcourt, adding 2 4-star recruits, Kai Rogers from OTE and Alec Blair from California. You lost the superstars, but they built out a lot of depth, and I think the backcourt's going to be really good, really intriguing. Didn't return a ton, but man, there's just something that with that roster that if you can get a couple of those guys to hit, and I think they will, I think that they could really kind of make things interesting there in that top half of the SEC, starting right there, middle of the road of the league. I really think that this is going to be a fun year for Porter Moser in Oklahoma. I think they're going back to the NCAA tournament.
And number 8 for me, I would have had higher a week or so ago, but I'm going Auburn. And I just think there's an adjustment. Like this is clearly just an adjustment from not having Bruce Pearl on the sidelines. Like this would have been a team a couple of weeks ago that I probably would have pushed somewhere number 5 is probably as high, maybe 4, but not much higher than that. But I'm slipping them just a little, Jack, because regardless of who is taking over that and moving a seat over, there's an adjustment that comes with it. Your preparation changes, your game day stuff changes. Even though this was something that they clearly saw coming, I don't think that you can be fully prepared for it until you're in that moment and you're the guy making decisions. Now, this is still a roster on paper that's going to be an NCAA tournament team that's got good guard play. I don't know if they have the rim protection that they have had on the defensive end of the floor, that consistent rim protector that has carried them a ton, like defensively, like they were able to affect shots at the rim for the back and latter half of Bruce Pearl's tenure. I don't know if they're going to be able to do those similar things defensively now. If they had that, I'd probably lean on it a little bit more. But this is still going to be a really good team that's going to beat a lot of good teams in this league. But I just think there's an adjustment that comes with being a head coach for the first time and then it being in the SEC, in this version of the SEC. Good team, not a great team. We'll be intrigued to see what Stephen Pearl's able to do there.
Yeah, I want to dig into that a little when we get to Auburn, just hearing a couple of picks from me. I want to dig deeper into that and just the value of coaching. But before then, I want to meet you in the middle there at number 7 for me. Chris Jans, the dentist, man, with Mississippi State. Totally agree with what you said about just the value of Josh Hubbard and that continuity. I mean, when you have a 19-point-per-game scorer back and a guy who can be a true All-American level talent and just kind of carry so much of that, load for you in that offense and just kind of that, as you wait for all the other pieces to kind of figure themselves out, exactly what you have in Josh Hubbard. He's a superstar talent. You got a couple of guys, Brandon Walker from Montana State, 15-point-per-game scorer, Jaden Epps, 13-point-per-game scorer at Georgetown, Jabari McGee, 11.1 points per game at UAB. You got a lot of those types of guys that, hey, just need to hit on 1 or 2 of those guys. You lost a lot of talent. Keyshawn Murphy, Claudel Harris, Riley Kugel, one of my favorite players in the SEC from a year ago, Cameron Matthews. He was 7 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 2.5 steals per game. Pope compared him to like a Draymond Green kind of player last season, just a do-it-all on two-way threat for Mississippi State. So they're losing a ton, but I love the way Chris Jans approached those kind of replacement options and saying, hey, we got to replace this kind of role. Here's how we're going to replace him. Really did a good job kind of building out a roster. It's not the sexiest roster in the world, but I think it's going to get the job done. And I think when you have Josh Hubbard there, I think it's going to make your life a whole heck of a lot easier and win you some SEC basketball games. So big fan there.
And where you went with them, like, I was in the same boat, and a lot of it is Josh Hubbard for me. Like, Josh Hubbard's the reason why I have them where I have them. If they had another piece or so, anytime you got an SEC Player of the Year caliber guy and he's at guard, you can outperform where people think you're going to finish. Like, that's a team, I'm just piggybacking off of you, that's a team that it wouldn't shock me, Jack, that if they're a top 6 or contending for top 5 team in the league at some point. Because if you've got great point guard play and a guy that is a shot maker, and we've seen it for a couple of years between Josh Hubbard and Mississippi State and Kentucky. Like, he's capable of making shots, just didn't make enough to beat Kentucky. He's going to make enough shots to beat a lot of teams, Jack, and it wouldn't shock me if they outperform what you and I both have them at that spot. But where I'm going next, and this is where you and I kind of had the two that are different. You went lower. I went kind of middle of the road. But, I've got Dennis Gates in Missouri there coming up next for me at number 7. And I know year 1, tournament, year 2, not great. Year 3, back to the tournament. And I think that this is a team with some continuity with the coach in this league that has had some success, has seen the good and the bad of the SEC, and just being on both sides of this. I think this is someone that's able to put rosters together and can coach a little bit as well. And I think that coaching matters, and I think that this is the team that's going to be in that NCAA tournament. This is one that, obviously, if Bruce Pearl were still at Auburn, I would have had lower than Auburn. But this is obviously a team that I don't know if they're going to – they don't have the shooting that you would like to see a team that's top 7 in the league have. But I do think that they have enough, and they win in that building. Like, that's a building that's just tough to go and get. Now, Kentucky was able to go there last year and get one. But I think that's a building in this league that's going to be a tough venue to go get some wins. And I think they're going to be one of those teams that's able to protect home court while also stealing some wins. And I think it's one of those teams that's going to be just ahead of that middle of the pack. Obviously, health depends on a lot with these teams, especially 7 through 10, 7 through 11. Any kind of injury could slip you a lot. But the Missouri's a team I think I'm intrigued by.
Yeah. Mark Mitchell. I mean, when you have having a star helps a lot in these types of conversations, to where, hey, do you like Josh Hubbard? Do you like Mark Mitchell? If you have that headlining piece, then you could kind of just defend however you want with these takes. So much of it, like we said to start the show, so many of this middle group, it's all subjective in terms of, hey, this team has a little bit more of this than this, but I like this a little bit more than the other. So you really can't go wrong in this middle core group, because, again, it's a really, really good league, a really, really deep league. Back to our conversation about one Stephen Pearl. I'm going Auburn at number 6. This one's weird for me, man. I really struggled with ranking Auburn in just trying to figure out like what to do with a roster that I really do like. When you have a Tahad Pettiford coming back, who is an all SEC talent, a guy who can be a legitimate lottery pick this time next season, you have him anchoring things as your potential guy. You have 2 really, really high floor guys in Keyshawn Hall and Keyshawn Murphy coming from UCF and Mississippi State. I love their addition of Kevin Overton from Texas Tech. Abdul Bashir is going to be was a superstar at the JUCO level. I'll be interested to see how he adjusts. Same thing with Elijah Freeman coming from Lincoln Memorial. How does the D2 adjustment go for him going to the SEC? 2 top 60 recruits, Sebastian Williams-Adams and local favorite Caden Magwood. So a lot to like with that roster, but lost Janai Broom, lost Chad Baker-Mazzara, lost Miles Kelly, Denver Jones, Dylan Cardwell, only averaged 5 points a game, but kind of the heart and soul of that team for so many years. And then Bruce Pearl. So much of this conversation is about Bruce Pearl and the value of coaching, Shawn, where I thought Bruce Pearl as an X's and O mind was as good as anybody in the SEC. I think he made people. I remember a couple years ago, Steven can vouch for me here, but we went a couple years ago and we went to a little wing stop, not wing stop, but a wing shop, a couple mile down the road from that venue, and talked to the locals about like, hey, what does Bruce Pearl mean to you? Like, what does he mean to this community and what he's done to this basketball program? And he's like, he made us care. We care about Auburn basketball on an equal level to, if not more so, than the football program. And, the way he pours his heart into everything and his soul is just all about us and War Eagle, and just embracing and embodying us makes us care. Stephen Pearl, the secret is out, has done a lot of the heavy lifting behind the scenes and in terms of the operation down on the Plains, the game planning, the scouting, the recruiting, portal evaluation. He did a lot of that stuff. So the roster construction, all of the kind of the big picture stuff that you get with that roster, a lot of it is Stephen Pearl, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. But you can't replace, Shawn, the game day approach, the preparation, the energy, the passion that Bruce had. That's a really, really tough thing to recreate. So I could have gone way lower here. I think that they are a top 5 roster, probably. Just it's the coaching thing. So I want to ask you, how valuable is coaching here? You had them at 8. I have them at 6, but I really think that it could swing either direction with Auburn. That it kind of scares me. So I have them at 6 here, but I'm not feeling totally in love with it.
Coaching matters a ton. It matters a ton. And I'm not saying that Stephen Pearl is not going to be a successful coach in college basketball or at Auburn. Like, I think he's more than, I think he's qualified for the job. Obviously, the way that they established that program there under Bruce, Stephen has been a key factor in everything that they've done, from day-to-day operations to practice planning to whatever it is on the day-to-day. And I know how important assistant coaches are. A lot of times assistant coaches are the key guys that help that run your program in a lot of areas and are built to be future head coaches. I think he's going to be successful, but I just think there's an adjustment period for year one for any head coach, especially in a league as good as the SEC and at a place where your dad has built every bit of what is significant basketball history in recent years. That's a ton of pressure to wear on your shoulders in year one. That's a roster that's going to win him games and could be a thing as he gets his feet wet and finds some things. Maybe late February, early March, it's a team that starts to perform and maybe is a top 5 team in the league. But I think there's going to be some nights early, Jack, where they have some slippage. And I just think coaching matters. But it's stuff that you can't microwave it. Like, it's something that you just can't microwave. And I feel like this is going to be more of a crock pot mentality type thing for Stephen Pearl at Auburn. It's going to cook slowly. We'll have some success, but not enough to live up to winning the SEC, getting to Final Fours like they have in recent years. So I think coaching matters, but the roster is still good enough on paper, Jack, that you can't slide them too far.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I could see if you had an argument about, Auburn needs to be 13th, I'd say, well, I think the roster is obviously better than 13th, but it's such a, I mean, when you retire on the first day of preseason practice, like, you just never know how it could work in the best way, where there's a buy-in and they believe in him and, kind of build him up and kind of make the learning curve super, super small for him. Or life in the SEC could be a living hell for him. It could really swing either direction. And I don't envy it, but hey, there are worse rosters to have as kind of a crutch to use in your first year. So we will see about that one. I am going, I guess, well, you have to go 6, right?
Yeah. And honestly, this one right here, I've gone back and forth, but Ole Miss at number 6 for me. This is all Chris Beard. Don't have a whole lot to say, Jack. It's just, if coaching matters to all of us, I think Chris Beard is enough to get a jump a few spots. Like, I believe Chris Beard is one of the best coaches in the SEC. I believe Chris Beard is one of the best coaches in college basketball. We've seen this over the course of his career, obviously taking Texas Tech to a national title game and nearly pulling off a win there and having an opportunity to win a national title at Texas Tech. We know how competitive he's been early on at Ole Miss. A roster that, when you look at it, you can find a lot of reasons to put them at 10 or 11 or 12. I don't know what the role's going to be. I don't know what Travis Perry's going to look like there, but I just think that Chris Beard is enough that I'm giving the benefit of the doubt, and I think they're going to outperform any expectation that we have of them in preseason and going into the season. So that's literally the Chris Beard effect for me at number 6, and that's why they get that bump.
And did a lot of really, really good things last year, made a tournament run, made an SEC tournament run. Like, I understand how you could, all you need is, three of those names, the familiar faces and names that have kind of bounced across college basketball forever. AJ Storr, Corin Johnson, James Scott, Corey Chess, Travis Perry, even like Nico Bundalo, a top 40 recruit that Kentucky actually offered back in the day. And, he's kind of an interesting name. There are pieces there, and you have the coaching. So if you kind of just put two and two together, that there is a vision there. There is a possibility. I'm just personally not buying into that. So we will have to agree to disagree on that one. This is where things get interesting, I think, Shawn. I think this is where we can kind of put the middle of the road teams behind us and focus on the legitimate contenders in this league. And I think what Nate Oates at Alabama did this offseason with very little money, having to replace Mark Sears, Grant Nelson, Chris Youngblood, Cliff Omarui, Mo Diabate, who we will talk about in a second, Darion Reed, Jaron Stevenson. He put together a pretty bang-up roster with very little funds that he has very publicly discussed how unhappy he is about how limited the resources are down there, if you will, for roster building. But I still think he did a bang-up job. I think one little kind of caveat to all this is Jaleel Bethea had foot surgery here recently. That was one of their kind of high potential guys that I personally love. Kentucky went after him for a long time. He once compared John Calipari offering a scholarship to God offering him a scholarship way back when. I don't know if you remember that one, but that was a very fascinating interview with the former four-ish, five-star-ish recruit, but he should be back by the end of November, but still a TBD guy. I think the big name that everybody is counting on to kind of really hit as a superstar is LeBaron Philon, 10.6 points per game last year, but kind of showed flashes there that he could be all SEC, all American level talent. And I think they're banking on him to be that guy. Aiden Holloway coming back as big time form. Latrell Wrightsell Jr. tore his Achilles a year ago. So in the process of making his return, he should be back here shortly. Aiden Sherrill coming back. I like him. He's a good, good center replacement for them. Long, athletic, big, kind of the stereotypical Nate Oates, kind of rangy big. I like the addition of Noah Williamson, Shawn, if you remember from Bucknell, star at Bucknell, played against Kentucky, averaged 17.6 points per game. I really, really liked him. Taylor Bowen was a guy that Kentucky really, really pursued. Wanted to get him pretty badly, but he was their Mo Diabate replacement, so that was kind of an interesting dynamic there. A lot to like about that roster, but we're really kind of banking on LeBaron Philon to be a superstar, and I think he can be that. So I think Alabama's going to finish top 5, maybe not a Final Four team, maybe not even a group that can return to the Elite 8, but I think they're going to definitely make a splash in the league.
And this is where we're similar. Like when you look at the top 5, kind of everybody can kind of see where you could kind of get to the point to where we're going to go with this top 5, but we're not going to have them all the same. A few spots will be the same, a few will be different, but this is where I've got Tennessee at 5. This is still going to be an NCAA tournament team. Rick Barnes has done an excellent job in Knoxville. He may have missed his window, Jack, of getting that program to a Final Four. Obviously, we on this show just 6-7 months ago, we were talking about, would we see Rick Barnes for this season? And we were talking retirement. And then now I don't know when Rick Barnes is going to retire at this point, 6 or 7 months
Lifetime,
later.
baby.
Lifetime contract. So we've seen how those work out. But I'll say this. This is a team. They're going to be great defensively because that is just a staple of who he is. They're going to be physical offensively. They're going to screen hard. They're going to do some things. He's going to manipulate some actions and get guys in the right spots. He's going to coach to win. He's a great coach. They're going to be a top 5 team in the league. Could they bump up and be 4-3? I think they could. They're not going to dip far, though. The foundation is still solid in Knoxville. It's not a team that's going to be able to, in my opinion, get to a Final Four. but it's a team that could be a Sweet 16 type team if they get the right draw in the NCAA tournament. But I think that the window to get to that Final Four, like you missed out on such a great 4, 5, 6 year stretch there of just great teams in Knoxville. This isn't one of those teams, but they're gonna fight, they're gonna claw, and then they've got enough, especially interior defense, that's going to make them a tough game for anybody. And this is one that Kentucky will have a hard time with, and others in the league. But I've got them slated at 5. It wouldn't shock me if they're 4 or 3. But I just don't see this being a team that I'm confident in to get to a Final Four or even that Elite 8 game. But I think it's a solid NCAA tournament team, top 25 team in the country potential, and one of the better teams in the league.
You said that they could be number 4. I have them at number 4. I this might be a hot take, but I think that this might be on the cusp of Rick Barnes' best coaching job since he arrived in Knoxville, just because we know what he's going to have to overcome before the season even begins. You have 2 just absolute icons of the program in Zakai Ziegler, Jemai Mashak, 2 guys that he just, sobbed over when they left, while also replacing Chaz Lanier, who was just, the absolute hit of all hits in the transfer portal, a guy that Kentucky fans desperately wanted. And, there's an argument to be had about, how hard they should have pushed for him and ultimately landing him. That would, how much that could have changed last year. So they're replacing so much. And then you look at who they replaced him with. You look at Jacoby Gillespie from Maryland, really, really good talent. Wonder where that star is going to come from at the 2. You're replacing, when you're replacing all those guards, who's going to be the Chaz Lanier replacement? I think that question is still a good one, but I think when the answer comes, it's going to come in a massive way, because I think Nate Ament is going to end up being that guy, that go-to scorer, top 5 recruit. Kentucky, hosted him for an official visit, really, really wanted him. I think he's a superstar. I think he's kind of one of those slow burn guys that it's going to be a minute for him to hit, but when he hits, it's going to be just like out of a rocket. I think he's going to be amazing and really kind of make up a lot of that star power. While, as you said, the foundation is so strong there. I think he built one of the strongest front courts in college basketball. I think they're tough. I think they're deep. I think they're physical. I think they're going to rebound hard. I think they're going to have, two-way ability. There is just so much to love about that Tennessee front court that I think they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. They're going to be an absolute handful to deal with on both ends of the floor, if they can get their guard situation figured out. If Jacoby Gillespie can kind of do the heavy lifting for you in the backcourt, then I think everything else will solve itself out. But I think this is a Rick Barnesy roster of all Rick Barnesy rosters, and I think he's going to do a heck of a job coaching them. So I think they're going to get a top 4 finish there. I'm with you there. Like 4, 5, even 3. I think that Rick Barnes, the foundation is just so strong in Knoxville. It's clearly not led to a Final Four, and they've whiffed on some great opportunities to get to a Final Four and break through and do something that program's never done. And now it just gets even more difficult because you don't have the same type of roster. Obviously, your point guard play is you're having to do something new at point guard that you haven't had to do for a few years because it's been such a key part of your roster. That's probably a question mark, just having a new floor general with what they're doing. But, God, they're just so good at what they do that they're going to disrupt, and they're going to be one of those teams that they're one of the better ones in the league. And then that leads me into the next one, just flipping spots with you, is Alabama. And we know what the recipe and the formula is going to be. It's going to be threes after threes after threes. They're going to shoot a ton of threes. But, Jack, losing a guy to Kentucky in Mo Diabate, and you just lost so many key defensive guys, I don't think that this is going to be a team that's going to be good enough defensively to do what they did a few years ago, where they went to the Final Four with such that high adjusted offensive efficiency number, but the defensive efficiency number wasn't what it was going to be. And I think that could bite this team and cost them some of that upside and that potential of being a Final Four team. It's a team that's capable of getting there. I just think you've got to be good defensively. And when you lose guys like Mo Diabate to Kentucky, which is going to benefit Kentucky here in a few minutes,
it's a tough thing to do. And I just think that they're going to shoot it well, but I just don't know if they got enough on the defensive end, but they're still going to be a top 4 or 5 team in this league.
Here's where things get interesting, folks. I think this is definitely the territory where fans start to kind of go, all right, now we're getting somewhere. Just how good can Kentucky be? You know, the other elephants in the room here with the returning national champion, with Coach Cal. Like, this is where the storylines get really fun. I'm excited to dig into here. And we're going with our first kind of big time surprise, in my opinion. Number 3, the Florida Gators. I hear you. I know that they are the media darlings once again, and it makes sense when you go 36-4 and you win the national championship, and you bring back Alex Condon and Thomas Huff and Ruben Chinelu. Like, there's a lot to like about what they're bringing back and who they added. Xavier Lee, Boogie Fland, AJ Brown. I get it. I totally understand it, and there's a reason why they're still top 3 in a very, very good league. But we are so underrating the absolute massive blow that losing Walter Clayton Jr. and his 18 points a game, Elijah Martin, his 14 points per game, Will Richard, 13 points, and then, again, Denzel Aberdeen, SEC, six man of the year national championship team, going to an SEC foe. Those 4 departures, Shawn, I think it's going to hurt Florida more than any fan is willing to admit publicly, because the highs of Walter Clayton Jr. were literally like Kemba Walker NCAA tournament run level good. Like that, just because they added really good talents in Xavier Lee and Boogie Fland, it doesn't just automatically replace the absolute greatness that this, like, don't minimize the greatness of this last run by just saying it was a straight up trade of Walter Clayton Jr. for Xavier Lee, Elijah Martin for Boogie Fland. I have some questions about this Florida team. I think they're going to be very, very good. How is Thomas Huff going to step in there at that 3 spot? We'll see. I think that's going to be an interesting one. Boogie Fland, can he play winning basketball? We have not seen him play winning basketball ever yet. There was an argument that Arkansas was better with Boogie off the floor than he was on. And then Xavier Lee, that jump from Princeton is a heck of a jump. Can he be a Walter Clayton Jr. level replacement? He's going to be good. Florida is going to be good, but they will not be going back to the Final Four, and they will not win the SEC, Shawn.
And I mean, this top half of the league, when you look at it, like, you can go a lot of different directions. You can pick them apart. This one right here, I think, is what's going to make it the league so appealing at the top this year. Is I'm going Arkansas at 3. Jack, this is a roster that, when you're talking about blending returning talent and 5-star freshmen and top-ranked players, like, this has the look of one of those John Calipari teams that I think can be really, really good. And can he get it to perform at that level? They were able to late last season. At one point, I said, this is not a team that's going to make the NCAA tournament. Then they were able to catch fire late, won some games, nearly pulled off. At one point, I was like, man, they're going to end up sneaking into a Final Four here with this run that they're doing. Was able to buy some of that grace with the fans in Fayetteville and get the excitement. And you know what John Calipari's classes can do, Jack? It can lead you into the next season where you're already looking ahead and thinking this is a Final Four team on paper. Well, this is one of the more talented teams in the league, one of the more talented teams in college basketball. It's got veteran pieces. Can they live up to it? Jack, this is a team that I think is capable of finishing higher than 3. Could also slip and go behind Alabama and Tennessee as well. So, but I think that on paper, this is a really good team with a blend of returning talent that has played in the NCAA tournament, some at multiple stops, and with incoming freshmen that would have been at Kentucky if we were still in that chapter. But I think that this is a really good Arkansas team that's got a chance to be very, very good if the freshmen come along and perform.
Number 2, Arkansas Razorbacks. It's a good team, folks. It's a very good team. They can't pass worth a lick. I'll just put that out there. It is going to be the ball hoggiest ball hog team that's ever ball hogged. But DJ Wagner is a constant. It's a guy that Cal is going to be able to lean on and trust when the going gets tough. I think that fit for a third straight year, I think, is going to finally work. We saw it kind of clicking there at the end of last year, and I think he's going to build off that. Carter Knox has some real, sophomore kind of breakthrough upside there. He could be a potential lottery pick this upcoming season. I like him, but man, I think the difference here is Darius Acuff, Malik Thomas. I don't love them for Kentucky. I didn't love them as potential Kentucky recruits. But as John Calipari recruits, I do think that they are go-to. I'm not saying, De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk level players, but the same, how they work off of one another, how they can both go hunt their shots, score, microwave scores, go really just kind of take the scoreboard, at any given moment. They are those two level of talents that are perfect fits for John Calipari. And I didn't buy some of last year's group, even the year before at Kentucky. I just didn't buy a lot of that, and I think that this is kind of finally the group that Cal has been looking for. Again, they lost a lot. They lost to Duthiero, lost John L. Davis, lost Big Z, Jonas Adu. Front court's going to be interesting. They added Malik Ewan from Florida State. I think he's going to be a pretty underrated add, and then Nick Pringle from South Carolina, good depth piece for him. So the front court is going to be interesting, but I do think that this is a John Calipari team, and it's weird to kind of have that buy-in here, but I believe in them. I do think that they're going to be very good, but maybe not the best.
Yeah, and that's where I'm coming from. That I think that they're going to be really, really good. I think they got potential to be one of the better teams in college basketball, and they got Final Four potential. If you're good enough to be in the top 3 in this league, you have Final Four potential. Number 2 for me, are we going to go Kentucky or are we going to go Florida? Because clearly that's what's left on the board. I'm going Florida. And Jack, this is still obviously losing Walter Clayton. I know what he did, but from the putting on the coaching hat, I still saw the things that Todd Golden was able to do on both ends of the floor, especially on the offensive end of the floor with some of the actions that he ran in the Final Four. And here's a coach sitting here and myself that took and stole a lot of those actions in the spring and kind of implemented them in the summer and ran some things. And guess what? Had a lot of success with them, with some of the ways that he was able to disguise and mask some of the things that he would run. I think he's got a team on paper. Obviously, there's no denying there's 4, 5, 6 guys that are going to show up on NBA radars. This is a team that's going to be able to bully its way on the offensive glass. They've got a lot of talent. I'm still putting them at second, just because we'll get into it in a moment, that I just think Kentucky and some of the things that Kentucky has, obviously it's no spoiler that they're going to be number 1, but it's not a homer take because I'll defend why I have them at number 1 over Florida. But Florida is still going to be a very, very, very good basketball team that I just think I trust Todd Golden. Like he earned a lot with me last year with the way that he was able to do a lot of it. Yes, Walter Clayton, but he's put him in spots to be successful. And that is still a really good roster on paper that I think is going to do very, very well in the league.
And I think I agree with you on that point, because I think Todd Golden is as good as it gets in college basketball, definitely in that top tier of coaches. Eddie Congress brought up that good point about Arkansas's schedule and how easy their SEC league schedule is. And I think that kind of, do you take the easier schedule in Arkansas or do you take the better coach in Todd Golden? And I think those two just kind of flip-flop. They go hand in hand. But again, as you said, I don't think it's a secret at this point, but I'm going the Kentucky Wildcats at number 1. Look, I'll be honest. I think going into the year, this offseason, after seeing the dust settle on the offseason, I was right there with you. I thought that it was going to be really tough to dethrone Florida. I thought that, Arkansas was going to be good, Tennessee, Alabama, that top group was going to be really, really tough to, kind of figure out for Kentucky where they belong. But the more I've heard and dug into this Kentucky roster and, going into the fall, the intel that has come out, look, the biggest question was Jalen Lowe. Could he be the guy for Kentucky, the straw that stirs the drink at that point guard spot? And I've heard he's been everything as advertised, if not better, exceeded every expectation they had when they signed him out of the transfer portal. True 1A, 1B complementary piece to Otega Oweh. And when you have, and I truly believe that Jalen Lowe is an all SEC level talent. Having those two side by side, Jalen Lowe, Otega Oweh, as legit all SEC talents, flirting with all American talents. I think Otega will be an all American. And I think Jalen will have something to say about that. I think a lot of the other stuff is going to figure itself out for Kentucky. And I think they're the deepest team in college basketball. I truly believe that the roster that Mark Pope put together has no obvious flaws. I think they're a better shooting team than anybody gives them credit for. They may not have the Kobe Bryant level, like best shooter in college basketball, but they got 6, 7, 8 dudes that can knock down shots at any given moment. Physicality, toughness, athleticism that they were obviously missing last year. Adding Mo Diabate and Denzel Aberdeen for those two spots alongside Otega Oweh, I think that is a three-headed monster from that toughness and physicality standpoint. That it's going to be tough to match. I think Colin Chandler is going to be awesome in a bounce back, kind of finally finding his footing, building off of what he did really well last year in March Madness. Trent Noah, I think, is going to be awesome. I think he may flirt with best three-point shooter on the team, and he just might kind of throw himself in the mix in leading rebounder as well. I've heard awesome things about how he just has this knack for this nose for the basketball, getting 50-50 balls, just does all of the dirty work and just kind of forcing Mark Pope's hand to say, dude, I got to play this dude. He is just always in the mix, and that dude makes winning plays, and I need him on my floor to play. When you add up all of those pieces, you say that's the deepest team in college basketball. I think they're going to win the SEC, and I think Kentucky's going to go to a Final Four.
I think Kentucky's winning the SEC as well. And the reason I have them at number one, to me, depth is just such a key thing. If you've got depth and you've got depth of talent and you've got it across your roster, not just in the backcourt, this backcourt's going to be phenomenal. When the front court is healthy and Jaden Quaintance is back in the equation, I think that Kentucky goes to another level. But when you can pull transfers, when you get a Denzel Aberdeen that was such a key piece of Florida winning a national championship team that you and I have second and third in the SEC power rankings going in, and then not only do you pull that guy, but you also pull Mo Diabate from number 4 Alabama, the team that you have at 5th. You pull transfers from two of the better teams that are in contention to be Final Four caliber in this league. It has to elevate you ahead of some of those teams, in my opinion. But when it comes to offense, the actions that Mark Pope's going to run and how he's going to manipulate those actions and how he's going to piece this thing together, you've got retention. You've got guys that have been in this program, ran the system. They're familiar with it. You've got veteran pieces that have won at the highest level of college basketball in Aberdeen and Mo Diabate getting to Final Fours, winning national championships. But when you look at this thing from the top down, Jack, it's the defensive end of the floor for me that's going to separate Kentucky from year 1 of Mark Pope to year 2 of Mark Pope. And here's why. When Jaden Quaintance gets back, Kentucky is going to have a defensive presence at all 3 levels of the floor. In the backcourt, Denzel Aberdeen is going to draw some assignments. Otega Oweh is going to be able to guard on the perimeter. You got Mo Diabate as that physical piece there at the forward that I think is going to be able to guard multiple spots on the floor. When you get JQ back in the mix, you're adding some rim protection and athleticism there. That is really tough to match. There's not many teams in college basketball that are going to have the depth that Kentucky has, but also have the depth defensively to match up at multiple spots on the floor and kind of have, when we're talking about being able to score at all 3 levels offensively, how about being able to defend at all 3 levels when it comes to matchups on any given night on your schedule? Non-con, SEC play, doesn't matter. This is a team, Jack, and and as good as Lamont Butler was, from what we've heard with Jalen Lowe, could they have upgraded at that spot at point guard play and gotten even better? But overall, the depth is just such a key piece to me too. You can overcome some injuries now that just last season they couldn't overcome. When it got to January and starting getting banged up, it was just so hard to find consistency with the lineup and at different spots. you can overcome some of those blows now. But this is just a really, really good roster on paper, and it's going to be a fun year.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's the versatility. It's the being able to guard on multiple positions. It's the being able to multiple ways to skin a cat. It's like you can win games with shooting, but if you're not winning shots, hey, we can muck things up defensively and make your life hell in the defensive end, and we can just attack you in so many different ways that just they really did a bang up job. And again, Jeff Goodman and Field of 68 now are partners with On3. They've, mentioned the financial side of this over and over again, that, yeah, Mark Pope had the most expensive roster in college basketball. They better be good. Well, they are. It is a very good. Kentucky got what it paid for this offseason, and I think that's what fans want to hear. When you're going to invest in roster construction, the more it was harder to see the vision as it was coming together. Well, okay, well, where's the shooting going to come from? Well, where's the defense? Where's this? Where's you can have those questions, but then when you hear, see the footage, you hear about how things are going on behind the scenes, about who's working well together and how these guys are coming together, and you really do think, well, shoot, I mean, this is a true 10 deep of dudes, of guys that are more than capable and will be able to contribute and win you basketball games. Guys like, we haven't even talked about it, a Jasper Johnson, a Malachi Moreno, guys that if you get a Jasper Johnson to hit, if you get Cam Williams to hit, you have some of these kind of wild cards in there. And Andrea Yelovich, what happens if he figures himself out and he can kind of be another kind of version of an Andrew Carr and kind of the role that he played this past year? You just have so many, you have a high floor guys are going to be constants, guys that are going to be the guarantees, if you will. And then the rest of the way, you have just a couple of these wild cards. If they hit, then this can truly be everything we dreamed of and more in Lexington, understanding the assignment, hanging banner number 9. They have all of that potential. They have the high floor and they have the high potential. And that's exactly what you're looking for in an offseason. So, man, it's a lot of fun to talk about. I really did enjoy this, and it's kind of the back and forth here. Anything that you think we could have missed? Anything that you kind of, as we're talking through all this, you said, man, I don't know if I love this, or hey, I didn't see it that way. Maybe, maybe they're going to be better than I expected, or maybe they're going to be worse than I expected.
No, that's what I was trying to look at when your graphic was up there, is if there's someone. I mean, obviously we have some differences when it comes to how high I have Ole Miss, how low you have Ole Miss. Texas A&M 10 to 13, but for the most part, I think it's hard to predict the middle down. The middle up, I don't think you're going to go wrong with a lot of those spots. Like, does Florida slide to 4 or 5 with the depth of this league? I mean, it could happen. Could Kentucky be 2 or 3? It all depends on those head-to-head matchups, obviously health. But I don't think we missed on a ton. I think that we're going to look back 3-4 months from now and see that the bulk of this thing, especially the top half, I think is going to be pretty spot on for those top 8-9 teams in this league. But the bottom half, I think, could fluctuate a little bit just because it's so hard to predict. Now, the bottom 2 are the bottom 2. I don't know if there's going to be a whole lot that South Carolina and LSU are going to be able to do to climb out of the cellar, but I think we had a lot of fun with this. This is one of my favorite episodes of the year.
Yeah, and we had a lot of fans ask for this. Like, this was like, hey, we've heard way too much about this Kentucky team. We want to know about everybody else and how this Kentucky group stacks up. And everything I've heard, everything I've seen, everything I've it's all adding up to, in a very good league, Kentucky has a very good team, and that's exactly what we wanted to hear. So yeah, well, we're a week away from Pro Day, Shawn, 6 days away from Media Day, and I believe next Saturday will be Big Blue Madness. So I can't believe that we're actually here. It sounds crazy to even just throw that out there into real life, that we are less than 2 weeks away now from Big Blue Madness, and basketball season's here. That's why we did this. That's why we want to do our SEC preview, because there literally wasn't another time to do this. Next week we're going to be talking about Pro Day. The week after that, it's going to be what happened at Big Blue Madness, what's coming up with the Blue-White game. After that, we're going to be recapping Blue-White game, SEC Media Days, those things. And then after that, it's Kentucky Purdue. Is that not just insane that we're even having that conversation?
It's here. Yeah. October 24th, I believe is the date for that. So I mean it's here.
Well, we'll be here for every step of the way, just as Roback will. Our friends at Roback, change the game with Roback, a proud partner of KSR. Get the best fit and the best feel with their incredibly comfortable activewear, from polos, Q-zips, to shorts and Delta Performance pants. You will look good and feel good with Roback. Use promo code KSR for 20% off your first purchase at roback.com. Don't miss your chance to be featured alongside the excitement of basketball season. Let us promote your brand. Reach us at advertise@on3.com. For Jack Pilgrim, for Shawn Smith, for everybody in the chat, for everybody that's following along on KSR Plus, make sure you go subscribe over there. Make sure you're subscribed right here on the KSR YouTube channel, and we will be back next week to recap our first time seeing the Cats. Pro Day. It's here, baby. We'll see you then. Go Cats.